Yeah, so you guys see some pretty heavy shit.
Yeah.
I've been on some of the scenes and I've seen it myself. And, that makes me wonder, because you guys are all volunteer, do you find it really difficult to find people that are willing to do the job?
Yes and no. You get some guys that, come into the service understanding the risks of what you're going to see and what you're going to kind of be exposed to in this line of work. And some
Nico
people
would be a good example of that.
Right. Yeah. And we explained, like, I just had a great friend of mine, Vin DeSalvo. He's a probationary, firefighter now. He's going through the academy. He wants to do water rescue. He's a great waterman. I've known him since high school, middle school. But I told him, I sat him down and I talked to him, like, listen, you know what I mean? Like, you're a great friend of mine. Like, and it's all joking around with the boys and this, that, whatever. Like, we have a great time. Like I said, we're a family, but you're going to get into some very heavy stuff, and you just need to mentally prepare yourself now, because a lot of people come into it naive a little bit, like, okay, yeah, like I've seen this on TV, or maybe I saw a pretty bad car accident where I saw a dead body or this, that, whatever. But it all changes when you're right then and there and you're in that situation, and you might have to see that person take their last breath. And that's something that will stick with me forever. And it's something that you have to kind of expect. And some people get driven away from it after that. Some people will leave after that. You know what I mean? And I can't blame them, because it's not for everybody. But we have great support groups, not only ourselves, but we can reach out to certain organizations that come in. We'll have a big debrief with everybody. We'll talk about the call. We'll talk about any call that we really want to have, that we've had that in the past will bother us, even if it's something not as crazy as you think, but it might just get to you a little bit. You could always reach out to certain support groups that we have in the fire department and in the fire service that we can reach out for. And they're a great group of guys that come out and help us through it. You know what I mean? And that's the biggest thing, is to talk about it.
These debriefs.
Sure.
Is this like a standard practice? Like if a rescue happens that you deem is traumatic,
yeah,
automatically everybody on the crew has to debrief?
Yes. Yeah. Anytime that there is a call that is just like, involve anything with children, sometimes can be very difficult. But anytime that there's a fatality, or anytime that there's a traumatic incident, we're always going to call for a debrief and sit down with everybody and see how everybody's feeling. And even after that, debrief, if everybody's like, yeah, that was pretty crazy, and that kind of like rattled me a little bit, but I think I'm okay. It might be 2-3 days down the road where you might really start thinking about it, and like, hey, like, listen, I need to talk to somebody. And then those resource groups are always going to be there. And 24 hours a day, I always say, you can reach out to me, reach out to my dad, you know what I mean? That, whatever.
That's awesome, man. Cause
so it's great. And it's something that kind of goes unnoticed, but there's a lot of suicides within, first responders. And that's
really
a big number of first responder deaths, especially.
Really?
It's been escalating as well. So it's something
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's something that is definitely, sometimes overlooked a little bit, but it's something that we're definitely trying to prevent.
Well, and like, you made a good point. People always ask, like, especially like for like lifeguards, firefighters, police officers, EMTs, like,
sure,
how do you deal with seeing all this trauma? And like, the truth is, like, some of us fucking struggle with it.
Yeah.
100%. And I think it's so awesome that you guys are doing that, because like, we're just expected to like take this stuff in stride, like see this traumatic stuff, and not like, and just internalize it and just move on. And like, that's not how the human brain works.
No.
That's so great that you guys are doing that.
Yeah,
like that like makes me so happy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that is definitely a big resource to us, especially on those traumatic calls, and especially those, sucky situations that we get ourselves into sometimes, because, 9 times out of 10, we're going to somebody's worst day. You know what I mean? And it's something that, we always have to kind of just bond together as a group. And, no traumatic is a good incident, but it also makes us almost more bonded together as a family.
Oh yeah. A trauma bond, dude.
Yeah, to go through something like that together as a group just makes us even stronger. And that's what a lot of, that's what a lot of people can say, and that's what a lot of people can agree on, is that, like, listen, although we went through this, we went through it together, and we're going to be there for each other through this whole entire process together.
I think the main part, because we on our beach have dealt with this in our own way, and I'm sure we'll get into it on the show eventually, but to be able to like convince yourself that like what went wrong, like you still did your best and that's enough,
right,
can be really hard. And it really does, it really does take someone putting their hand on your shoulder and say, listen, like, you were trained for this, you did everything you needed to do.
Yep, this
isn't your fault.
Right.
Yeah, you make a good point. I just want to interject here because I'm a surgeon, and I assisted a lot of general surgeons, and I've had people who, as soon as we finish operating them, they go to recovery and they die. We've had trauma and all of that, and you could look back in like World War II. There's the guys who were flying the B-17 planes, 10 guys in there. They were dying left and right. You go out, and your friend never came back. I think there's two things that, because you're going off in a little tangent here, but I think it's a good thing to talk about. Two things happened with me, is you get to the point where you realize you train and you do the best you can.
Right.
And that's going to help you. So you need somebody to tell you that, but you should internalize and say, I'm going to train the best I can. That's why you be in the best shape. You don't fool around, you take it serious. Yeah. And that helps you at the other end. And the other thing is you get to a point, and I can tell you right now, it will happen. You will get detached to a certain degree. I used to be in the hospital, and we would have car accident victims come in, they're dead on arrival. We'd be ventilate them, go down and get x-rays. And, I'd be talking to the nurse and, talking about what we're going to do. We're going out to it on a date the next, 2 nights. You get to that point. The human body is an amazing thing.
It is.
But you have to bring them on, and like as if you're a captain of the lifeguards or captain of the fire department, you have to be very cognizant that everybody's going to go into that phase differently, and you need to bring them along. Like you said, they need to be spoken to. You need a shoulder to cry on to, so to speak. And I got to the point where how I dealt with it and where I was having a hard time is when I was doing my residency. There was one hospital I worked at, and the hospital didn't stink, but it had a certain smell. And the hardest thing for me every day was going through the front door and to get that smell. If I could, and that sounds crazy, doesn't it? But if I could get, and I saw such stuff. I don't want to tell. Gunshot woman's woman, stopped with her car to get ice, sand out of the back. Car goes into the back of her, slids back of her, amputates her one leg, and the other leg's hanging off. It kept right across from her hospital. They brought her in, the leg in a bag. They got what leg here. I mean, you sit there. I'm I don't know, 23 years old, whatever. I'm like,
You're like, what do I do with this?
But there's other doctors there. But you see that stuff, and you see the misery and the family. Like when somebody drowns, that's one thing. But there's the mother, the father, the brother, the sister, the aunt. All of that. But my point is that there's little things that you have to get through. And like to me, I got through the smell, But you make a good point, Tyler. It's hard. But all of us have to, in our line of job, in our line of work. Here's the thing, though, and I always tell you this: you saved somebody's life, right? You could tell me now a story where you definitely saved somebody's life.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, we all did. I have, and that gives you that cushion when you don't. When you can save their lives,
it's true.
And that's what you have to hang on to. So it's the at the end of the day, hopefully you got more wins than losses. And that's the only way to look at it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think something else that's worth pointing out is like the flip side of that coin is like when you're done with that, and when that intensity is missing from your life.
Yeah,
because like you see it a lot more in like. You can see it in like lifeguards when, you're done for the season and now you have like 6 months where
nothing's going on.
You're not turned on every
Don't worry.
second of every
When you
day.
turn my age, I'm 65. Trust me, I'm getting to the point where I'm getting like, hey, you guys can make the, but you make a good point. You get the adrenaline. It's a high too.
Yeah,
you do get on it. It's a speed.
Biggest thing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, you're fine. Yeah, the biggest thing too. That's actually a trauma in itself. Believe it or not, the way that you put that is actually a trauma in itself. You could think of it as is because. As first responders, we're going to this call, right? And that's a huge adrenaline rush, right? And then if, say, we get a ocean rescue, right, and it's a bad call, like we get a bad one, and then, that call wraps up, that divvies up, this, that, whatever, you go back to your firehouse, you have your debrief, and it all took maybe like, maybe you're out there for 2-3 hours, you come back. Now you just come back home. And now you gotta go with your girlfriend to her family's dinner.
Yeah, and make like nothing happened.
And act like nothing just happened.
Yeah.
You're like,
an
hour and a half ago, I was just pulling somebody out, and they died right in front of me. And now I gotta go, to dinner with my family, and they have no idea what just happened. And that's something that's hard in itself to grasp. Like, holy shit! Like, you know what I mean? Like
a lot of times, it's not until the trauma is completely over that you start dealing with it, right. And like it hits you.
Yeah, the biggest thing is after a long day, like there's been times this past summer where we were literally running water calls all day. I had one bad fatality the one day, and after it's all said and done, like the sun's finally going down. You're like, oh, thank God the sun's going down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you finally pack everything up after a long day. Ocean rescues, this, that, whatever, and then you go home and take your first shower after that. You're like, what the hell just happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you're like, I can't even believe what just happened.
Yeah, and when you talk right now, you talk about post-traumatic stress syndrome. There's what I read is there's 22 soldiers a day.
Yep.
Are committing suicide.
Yep.
And Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran and all that, and there's your answer. I mean, not your answer, but there's your proof. I mean, these things are hard to deal with, and a lot of people are not. I don't say they're not equipped. They're weak or anything like that. You can only take so much. We've seen in World War II. You've seen it in World War I, but you do have to. You really gotta. Sorry. I hit the table and everything shakes. And I can tell you from my experience. I don't want to preach to you guys, but you gotta. Actually, the more I don't want to say it gets easier, but you have to. You cannot go into a rescue or into a call with that baggage because you will not. Like when I was doing the surgeries, and especially when I'm helping my buddy who's general surgeon's trauma, and you got to do it, especially the blood and all of that, and you see these poor people, you got to just go. So it's you got to get through it, but it's tough. There's a lot of people who are dying right now. I didn't know that first responders. I guess too.
That doesn't surprise me.
Well, I think when we say first responders, though, we're first responders. I think it's what level. I think we're there on a fire department. You guys see, the car crashes. That used to get me.
Sure.
When they brought people in, and I've seen people that were just horrible to figure it in.
Yeah, it's like you can't even imagine how like they even ended up that way.
And then you see, but I see them now. We're operating on them, and they're in the hospital for a month, and we're talking to them. And you got their family, and trust me, doctors. It's rough. I'm surprised there's not more doctors jumping off. But I think what happens is that you get to the point where you just pack it in and you go. But you guys and lifeguards to a certain degree, we're all in that scenario. That's why I think we have to think about when we save somebody's life,
right?
So that it's not all negative.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And if we don't do it, again, hopefully we're strong enough. But who's going to do it if we're not going to do it?
Exactly, and that's like one of the biggest things too. Like you said, you know what I mean. Like I remember like one of those days where we were just. I remember I woke up at 8:30 in the morning to a water call, and it went from 8:30 in the morning to probably 7 o'clock that night of just straight water calls.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I remember I got to a certain point where we had a fatality that day, and it was just like it was one of the worst situations that I probably ever had to be in myself. And after the whole thing was done and we had the we got the patient eventually loaded into the back of the ambulance, this, that, whatever. And we're still on the beach and we're trying to get all our stuff back together. And like, I just like almost like lost it for a minute because, you know, I was just like, dude, like this is like, I'm already exhausted and it's not even 1 o'clock yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and my dad had to pull me aside and he's like, listen, he's like, I need you to get your head in the game. He's like, push it all off now. We'll deal with it later. He's like, but I need you here right now. And I was just like, okay, like that's all I needed to kind of, but you need that push sometimes, like you said, to kind of get through it because you can never go in a situation. And we don't let any of our guys go. If they're going if they're going on a call, this, that, whatever, with a sour attitude, or, you know, if they got other stuff on their mind, they're not going to perform 110% of their ability, which we can't have. You know what I mean? Because we need your mind in it to win it at all times. You know what I mean? So it's something that is definitely a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but sometimes you just need to force yourself to kind of just reset. Yeah, and then go from square one all over again.
So I'm sorry, guys. After you got, I got another question for Nick. I wanted to ask him.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
It's funny because like people that you know see beach patrols and you know fire departments and just these really tightly knit organizations. They're usually first responders. They'll look at us and the way we interact with each other, and they'll say like, "Oh, that's like a frat," or "Oh, like that's kind of culty." And I think that, you know, one of the big reasons for that is that shared trauma. Cause like we go home at the end of the day and we have all this shit we need to unload that only these people that were there with us are going to be able to understand.
1000%.